Welcome to another volume of the Big Six. This week, our focus is hip extension. The hip plays a vital role in helping us move from point A to point B and overcoming the forces of gravity. So we'll start in quadruped, and this week, just kind of every time you go through this movement sequence, think about what your hip does on a day-to-day basis. Our first position would be quadruped hip extension. We're going to turn the hands out, as always, just to engage your shoulder girdle a little bit. And then you're going to make sure that you're maintaining good alignment. So in this position, I'm going to keep my right knee bent. I'm going to try to place my footprint on the ceiling. And notice I'm not going to go into a ton of extension, because that would be lumbar spine extension. We want it to really be hip extension. I'll try the same thing on the left. And try to notice if there's a difference between the right and the left. You can go through and do it. Again, I'm not a sets and reps guy, but let's say you did 10 of them, or you did 5 really good ones on the right, and you try to do 5 really good ones on the left. The idea is to experience that movement, feel what's different, right versus left, and then work on it. If this is pretty easy and you get a ton of hip extension without going into hyperextension, or if you feel very limited in hip extension, you could move to a position similar to this. So I'm going to bend my elbows and I'm going to turn my hands out just a little bit. And I want some contact or pressure, some force through the wrist all the way through the elbow. So I'm pushing through my forearm and I'm going to go into hip extension here on the right, there on the left. And so it gives me a way to challenge hip extension a little bit. Very, very good in terms of being aware of what your glutes are or aren't doing. Next, we're going to do a bird dog, but this bird dog will have a bit of a variation. We're going to try a crossbody or diagonal reach with this bird dog. I'm going to start with my right arm and left hip. And I'm going to go into extension in the hip, flexion through the shoulder. As I come back, I'm going to hover my left knee, and I'm going to reach down and back, and then I'm going to extend the hip and flex the shoulder. Down and back, extend the hip, flex the shoulder. And try this on the other side. And I'm trying not to allow my body to move too much, and I'm not trying to turn through my lumbar spine. I'm really trying to allow my thoracic spine to turn. So, starting in this position, I extend the right hip and flex the left shoulder. And then I'm going to come down, reach as I'm hovering this knee, and then back and hover, and then back. So you get a good diagonal pattern. You make sure the front line has some tension, but you also work on that hip extension, which we started off this series working on. We're going to do a sternal drop next. Again, this one is a bit modified. Since we've been working on hip extension, what we're going to do is walk away from the hip or the knee. So think about if you're doing a push-up with your knees down. You don't want to be still flexing the hip. We're going to try to extend the hip. Maintaining good alignment. Feel like you're engaged. You're going to drop your spine towards the ground, keeping your belly button pulled in. Not going to drop your head this way. And maintain good alignment. Then push away. Drop again. And push away. So your shoulder blades are coming closer together as you drop your sternum to the ground and then pushing back away from the ground. So that would be your sternal drop, but it'll be a bit modified. Remember, we did sternal drops here where we went down towards the ground, then back away. All right, so that was what we began exploring in terms of movement, but now since we're working on hip extension, we get in a position that challenges the hip a little bit more. We're going to do a part of a Turkish getup. We're not going to do an entire Turkish getup, but we'll do a part of it. And this follows that same theme of extending your hip. I'm going to start lying on my back. I'll have my left knee bent. My right foot's going to be out. My right leg's going to be straight, but out a bit. I'm going to take my left arm, it's going to reach up to the ceiling. My right arm is going to be down here on my side. And from this position, I'm going to come up, extend, and I'm going to work my way back down. Reach up, and that is my hip extension there. And slowly back down. I'll do the same thing on my right side. So I'll flex the right hip. I'm going to reach up for the ceiling. Like my left leg's going to be out a bit. And work my way up. Just like that. All right, and it's part of your Turkish getup. We'll just call it a getup bridge. That's appropriate for what we're doing this week. Let's do T-spine rotation next. Starting on all fours, hands turned out just a bit. I'm going to lock everything out. Okay, so I'm going to reach behind my head. I'm not pressing on my head. Arms just here, or my hand is there, and I'm going to try to rotate up and back down. And I'm not moving from the hip or from the pelvis. I'm just trying to see how much thoracic rotation I can get. And I'll turn to do the other side. So left, similar, good alignment. And that's thoracic spine rotation, but you're starting from a quadruped position, so it makes it a little bit more challenging. We're going to end with a standing hip extension. So I'm going to turn to the side. Let's start with the right hip. My left, I'm going to stand with a lot of my weight, or most of my weight, over my left ankle. My right hip is extended, so I'm not hyperextended on the lumbar spine. Right hip is extended. And I'm going to involve my arms here at the outset. I want to fire this right glute. So my right hip extension and my left shoulder extension should be coupled, right? That's what happens with walking. It's a reciprocal pattern. So it should look like this. And what you're going to find is that your right glute is going to talk to you a little bit. Good. So you're trying to stay nice and tall. Whoop. Lost my balance there a little bit. But nice and tall, really working hip extension on that right side. On the left, it look very similar, right? So left hip extended. That means my right shoulder has to extend. My left shoulder is going to flex as I work into that extension pattern. I could get bigger, but I'm not doing it by hyperextending my lumbar spine. I'm really working on extending my hip, really firing that glute. If you have some knee issues, sometimes what you find is your hamstrings may be way too active, and that overactivity in the hamstring can limit how much activity you have in your quadriceps, which are your knee extensors if you're trying to stand up from a chair. But in walking, really your gastroc or your calf, because it crosses the knee, is going to create that extension or that straightening moment of the knee. Great thing to kind of just work on, balance, hip extension, core integration. They all come together when we do something as beautiful as walking or running. That was our Big Six for the week. We hope you enjoyed. We hope your hip extension gets better. You're more aware of it. And continue to move well, live well, and do amazing things.